be online to everybody else right now, or just?
Yeah, we're starting to record right now. Okay, hang on.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bruce McCallum, and welcome to Victoria Home Chat. We've got a great program tonight. We're going to be talking about First-Time Homebuyer 101, and I'll just get to the next slide here. Just bear with me a second. Before we get started with our program tonight, just a little bit about Victoria Home Chat. I started this program about a month now. This is number 6, I think. And really, we're here to help home buyers and sellers. We provide lots of interaction, live Q&A, and we don't have any hype. We don't have any sales pitches. We're not going to try to sell you on another seminar or books or things like that. We just want to help you as a homeowner, home buyer, or home seller. And we have weekly series programs Thursdays at 8 p.m. And tonight we're going to have live Q&A as well. And just a little housekeeping here. On the right side of your screen, you're going to see an empty box, and you could type in your question there, and that will come to me, and then I can answer that, or I can pose that question to the panelist. My guest tonight, Jerry Smith from TD Canada Trust. I've known Jerry for quite a while, and we're going to be talking about first-time home buyers. What should you, as the home buyer, do to make the home purchase as smooth as possible? We're going to be talking about some things to protect you as well. In Victoria right now, the market is picking up. There's lots of inventory, and it's a great time for you, the first-time home buyer, to get into the market. And obviously, some of the questions about finances and everything will arise, and that's what Jerry's going to talk about tonight. So, Jerry, you're on the line there?
Hello, yes, I am here.
Okay, great. Speak up just a little bit so I can hear you.
No problem. Just let me turn the microphone up here. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, Jerry, thank you for your time tonight. I'm hearing a little bit of echo from the speakers in your computer, so if you could turn that down a little bit.
There we go. Turn that down a bit. Okay, we're good.
Okay, great. Well, Jerry, you've been a senior mortgage manager. You've got a lot of experience under your belt. As the people can see on the screen, you've won a Lifetime Achievement Award, 10,000 clients. You've been doing this for a while. Ranged over $1 billion in mortgage volume. Absolutely. So I think you're a good person tonight to talk about maybe what things first-time home buyers can do.
Absolutely. The big thing is I enjoy what I do, and that helps people get to where they want to go. Because if you don't like what you do, then it makes it a little more difficult to make things happen. And that's the strength I bring to this for people. Yeah.
Now, I always talk to people when they come to me about searching for a home. Do you have your finances in order? And this is a great place to start our webinar tonight. Talking about how important it is to really get your finances in order before you even start looking out in the marketplace.
That's exactly right. The most consumers, start poking around on the internet and looking at things and what they want to buy, but they're not really sure how much they can qualify for or how really to go about it. And the best thing to do is make sure that you have got yourself organized and prepared so that you can make an offer, and the seller will consider your offer seriously, as opposed to saying, well, I'm sort of looking, but I haven't really decided what I want to do. So what the pre-qualification or first-time home buyers is, you want to make sure you're properly pre-qualified, know where you're going, and know what your price parameters are and what you want to spend necessarily. Some people might say, well, I can qualify for considerably more than I really want to spend, and that's what it's all about. What's your comfort level as to what you want to get into?
So let's talk a little bit about what you've got on the screen here, high ratio. What does that mean in conventional?
So there's two types of mortgages. There's a high ratio mortgage and what's known as a conventional mortgage. Now, high ratio mortgage some people think, well, that means high risk. It doesn't mean that necessarily. What it means is high ratio is simply if your down payment is less than 20% of the purchase price, it's known as a high ratio insured mortgage. And the federal government has legislated that all financial institutions are required to insure a mortgage when your down payment is less than 20% of the purchase price. The minimum down payment is 5%, as on the screen there. Minimum down payment is 5%. You can arrange 95% financing. There's been a lot of misconceptions over the last year saying, well, I need more money down. You actually don't. It's still only 5% as a down payment of the purchase price. You can use, one of the restrictions is that the government reduced amortization periods to a maximum of 25 years on a mortgage. You can use up to $25,000 from your RSP for the down payment. And there are a couple of things like the federal government, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can get a $750 tax credit on your income tax as a first-time home buyer. And with 5% down, the maximum purchase price is $1 million. So there have been a couple of changes in those criteria for a high ratio mortgage.
Yeah, if I can just jump in here quickly, I think a lot of people remember a couple months ago hearing about the new home buyer bonus. I think it was $10,000, and I think we have to be clear that that has gone away now as of, I think it was April 1st.
April 1st, that's correct. The government, this is actually a BC government program that gave first-time homebuyers $10,000 on a purchase of a new home, but disappeared as of April the 1st. Whether they'll come back with that again, I don't know, but it's certainly gone at this point. Now, on a conventional mortgage, you then need 20% down according to the government, but with a 20% down, we can amortize the mortgage up to 30 years as opposed to 25 years on the high ratio mortgage. You can still use your RSP for down payment up to $25,000. The down payment can be a combination of money from your RSP, cash from your own resources, and you can also use a gifted down payment. Now, the gifted down payment, you can also use that for the 5% down program as well. So high ratio mortgages can use a combination of RSP and or a gift, or straight gift from parents. The gift has to be from parents, relatives, direct relatives. It can't be from a friend or a buddy. It has to be, a source that's trackable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll go to the next slide here.
And the big question becomes, how do I qualify for mortgage? What do I do, and how much do I qualify for? So the first things to do are get yourself organized. If you're regularly employed, federal government, provincial government, or employed by someone, then get a copy of a recent pay stub. The simplest thing is get a letter of employment confirming what your income and occupation is from your employer. You may be receiving a pay raise fairly recently, so we want to get your most current income so that we can assist with qualifying you for the maximum amount that you want to spend. You don't have to spend what you can qualify for, but you want to know what your parameters are. If you're self-employed, you may need a copy of your Notice of Assessments from Revenue Canada. That just shows that you filed and paid your income tax, and if you're self-employed, we get a 2-year history of your income. We don't need down payment verification and a gift letter necessarily up front, but these are things that you will require down the road, either copies of bank statements or investment statements or RSP statements, and or a copy of a gift letter from parents or relatives who are providing you with the down payment if they're assisting with your down payment. As to how much you qualify for, we can use up to 35 to 40% of your gross annual income for the to qualify for the mortgage. Now, what we can use will be impacted by whether you have other debts like car loans, car leases, personal loans, student loans. So if you have any of those types of things, that will have an impact on how high we can go. The quick sort of rule of thumb nowadays is that if you have an income, a family income of say $80,000 a year, you can qualify for a mortgage of roughly 5.5 times your annual income. So if you're making a family income of $80,000 a year, you can qualify for a mortgage of about $440,000. That's a quick rule of thumb, but it's pretty standard unless you've got any large outstanding debt payments or car leases or things like that.
Okay. Okay. So that's a good summary. And like I said, this is so important to get your things in order before you go out shopping.
Right. So this next screen, on the left side of the screen is your high ratio insured mortgages. So this really says, if you don't have any large outstanding debts, what can I qualify for? And I've used as sort of an average, family income of about $80,000. And being in the business for a long time, I've kind of looked at this and said, well, what seems, and $80,000 is a reasonably good average for a family income if you've got, two people working. So on a high ratio mortgage, without any sort of major outstanding debts, we can use about 35% of family income, which is about $23.33 per month. That must cover principal, interest, and taxes, and the heating. Now, on an income of $80,000, that will qualify you for a mortgage of about $433,000. This is a high ratio insured mortgage. There is a CMHC or Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation insurance premium added on to the mortgage, which is a federal government requirement of all financial institutions. And so that'll make your total mortgage $440,907, including that premium. But the important part to the purchaser is saying, well, I can qualify for a mortgage of $433,000 based on that income of $80,000. What can I purchase? That means you could purchase a property for about $456,000, and then you would need about $23,000 down as a down payment on that purchase. So that's a pretty good rule of thumb, using the 5.5, also using about 35% of your family income. Now the high ratio mortgage is also restricted to a 25-year amortization. So that high ratio mortgage reflects those considerations. On the conventional mortgage, again using 35% of family income to cover the principal, interest, taxes, and the heating, you can qualify for a mortgage of about $494,500. So there's about a $60,000 difference between what you can qualify for on a conventional and a high ratio mortgage. The big difference is we can do a 30-year amortization on a conventional mortgage. So if you have 20% down, that means you could purchase for about $556,300. With 20% down, leaves a mortgage of $494,500. But your buying power increases on a conventional mortgage because of the 30-year amortization.
And you're basing these figures, I'm looking at the bottom of the screen there, you're basing these figures on 5-year fixed closed term at 2.89.
Correct. Interest rates are right now at all-time historical lows. To me, it's a terrific time to look at doing something in the market because the interest rates have never been lower than this. You'll see, and although as I work for TD Canada Trust, we do have a brokerage division, so I'm also familiar with what rates are available through our brokerage side, and you will see rates posted on the internet of 2.79, maybe 2.69, or not 69, 2.79, 2.74. So those are rates available, but there are usually, I guess, restrictions to those types of products. The 2.89 is through most of the major financial institutions such as TD, RBC, CIBC, or Bank of Montreal or Scotiabank. You will see some 2.79% rates available, but those will be what I call virtual banks. And the virtual banks are companies like Street Capital, Merix, MCAP, and these are companies that don't have any bricks and mortar. There's nobody local you can talk to. You basically get a 1-800 number. And in my experience in this business, to get 0.1% better on a rate and a 1-800 who cares number is not really practical for a client, because this is the biggest investment that the client will ever make in their life. And why would you want to deal with somebody that you can never get a hold of or never talk to because there isn't anybody in town and all you get is a 1-800 number? So it's not always, and I've said this for years, it's not always about rate. It's about what you're getting in the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is you want to be able to walk and talk and touch the people you're dealing with, as opposed to getting a 1-800 number.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And in previous webinars, I think you've heard me state how important it is to build a team around you. And when I see when I see a team, I mean a team of financial advisors such as yourself, a realtor that you like and that you trust, and a good lawyer who's experienced in real estate. And yeah, you just can't do that without that human factor in it. I agree. One quick question, and I know you can't see into the future, but here we are, we're in middle of May, or May 23rd. We've got 2.89 right now. Do you foresee that lasting for a while?
Yeah, I think I do, because the reason being is with the recent government changes, well, the most recent were last August, I guess, or July. The last government changes where they reduced the amortization to 25 years, and they've tightened up some of the qualification criteria. The mortgage market has slowed, and the real estate market has slowed somewhat. So there's fewer sales. I think year-over-year figures are showing that sales are down something like 15 to 20% in a lot of the markets across the country. So there are fewer properties selling, and therefore the mortgage activity is slower. The banks have lots and lots of money to lend out on mortgages. So it's simply a matter of pricing. The banks are very aggressive. They want to get mortgage money out. They have lots of mortgage money. So, and the bond market is where mortgage money comes from, is also, those rates are down. So the competitive factors with the banks wanting more and more mortgage business in what I call a shrinking mortgage pie, I think is going to keep rates down for the next several months. I don't see any sign of those rates going anywhere in the near future.
Good time to buy during the summer. There's lots of choices, and certainly we can see the numbers here. They're very attractive.
Right.
All right. So let's talk just a little bit about using the RSP for a down payment. I don't think too many people are aware of that.
No, you and actually there's some misconceptions too, is that you don't have to be a first-time home buyer to use your RSP. So I'll cover some of the points in that. You can use up to $25,000 from your RSP for down payment. You must repay it over a period not exceeding 15 years. And payment commences 1 year after you have withdrawn the money from the RSP, or 1 year after you've completed your new purchase. The thing that gets people confused is that I have to be a first-time home buyer, and the answer is no, you don't. You just either A, have not owned before, or must not have owned for at least 5 years. So if you've not been a property owner for at least 5 years and you have money in your RSP, you can use that for the down payment. There's another rumor that I hear probably half a dozen times a year or more saying, well, you know, my spouse and I have divorced or separated, we sold our matrimonial home, and now I've moved on. I want to buy a property and I want to use my RSP, but I can use my RSP because we're now divorced. And the answer to that question is not so. It comes down to the 5-year rule. You must not have owned for at least 5 years, and divorce or common law split up or matrimonial breakdown does not allow you to use the RSP. So that's something that comes up probably half a dozen times a year. In these, with these interest rates, I always encourage clients, don't use the RSP unless it's the only asset that you have to make the purchase. The quick figures are, at these interest rates, to borrow, say, $10,000 from your RSP, the payments on the mortgage at these rates are actually cheaper than the payments required to repay your RSP over 15 years. So it's a good source to use for down payment if that's the only source you have. But if you have enough for the down payment, the 5%, don't use the RSP unless it's absolutely necessary. But again, with the price points where they are now, that the market has corrected or moderated, and the interest rates, I wouldn't hesitate to use the RSP if that's the only source you have to get into the market. Now, once you've used your RSP, so you have to start repaying after the end of 1 year. Any new contributions you make to the RSP, if you're accumulating money for a down payment, have to be in the RSP for at least 90 days before you withdraw the money on a tax-free basis. And repayment of your RSP does not count as a new contribution. That's simply repayment of the money that you withdrew. And if you don't, and some clients say, well, I'm not going to pay my RSP. Well, if you don't repay the RSP in a particular tax year, the government simply says, well, if you withdrew $10,000 from your account and you didn't pay this year, we're going to add 1/15 of that $10,000 to your income for that year, and you'll be taxed on that additional income. So that's the way the government looks at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you're speaking here, I'm thinking also this might be a future topic about the tax-free savings account and using that as a vehicle to save up and use that as a down payment. But maybe we shouldn't get into that right now.
But that's a good point. I mean, we can touch on that quickly. That instead of making contribution to an RSP, you make a contribution to a tax-free savings account, and any whether it's in stocks or bonds or other types of investments, any increase in value in the tax-free savings account is simply tax-free, and you can withdraw that money without requirement to pay it, and there's no tax implications because it's a tax-free account. So that's another option. You're exactly right. Yep.
Okay. All righty. So lots of buyers that I've dealt with in the past, I asked them about their financial situation. You know, have you been pre-qualified or pre-approved? And they always, well, I can't say that they always do, but many times they say, oh, I've been pre-approved, no problem. But talk to us about the difference. And I think first-time home buyers really need to know the difference here.
There is a substantial difference. So, and this isn't a knock against a broker. I'm just saying these are the differences between what a client can expect. So when you get a pre-approval, it's usually through, as from the screen there, it's usually through a virtual lender, and that means you've probably gone to a broker, and you've given your information to a broker, and the broker says, yeah, you're pre-approved. However, the brokers use what we call virtual lenders, which are companies like Merix and MCAP and Street Capital and First Line, or companies like that. And the problem with these companies is they do not do pre-qualifications. In fact, they don't even see the application. The only person who has seen your application is the broker. So the broker takes your financial information, gets income and employment information, and says, yeah, you're good to go. But that's only on the strength of what the broker knows. So if it's and there's some very, very good brokers out there who are very experienced, but if you're dealing with a broker who maybe hasn't been in the business very long, they're just giving you their opinion on what they think you can qualify for based on the information you've given them, but nobody has seen your file other than the broker. So what does that mean for the client? The client simply has a rate hold guarantee from the virtual lender, who's just saying, here's your rate, 2.89%, and it's guaranteed for 90 or 120 days, and that's all you have is a rate hold. You do not have a pre-qualification. If you ask the broker for a letter, you may get a letter, but if you look in the top right-hand or left-hand corner, it'll probably simply say it's a rate hold, and it's subject to credit, employment, income information, etc. So there's a whole bunch of conditions attached to that pre-approval that you get from a broker, because that's all it is a rate hold and nothing else. The difference is on the right-hand side of the screen, pre-qualifications. So the major financial institutions such as TD, BMO, RBC, CIBC, whomever, they actually do pre-qualifications. You go into CME or whatever, and we get your income and employment information, pay stubs, letters of employment, notice of assessments from Revenue Canada. We do a credit check. We take your personal financial information. We submit your file to our credit center, and same with RBC or BMO or whomever. They'll send your file in, and the credit center will actually review your file and say you are pre-qualified. Now that pre-qualify means that not only have, it's not a rate hold, it means we have checked your credit, we're satisfied with your employment, and we are prepared to give you a pre-qualification letter that says you are pre-qualified, you are in a position to buy. Yes, you still have to maybe make it subject to financing because you may have to get high ratio insurance approval, or there may be an appraisal required, but you as the borrower have been pre-qualified. And that's a big difference between that and what a broker offers is simply a pre-approval, which is a rate guarantee and nothing more. Because the lenders that the brokers deal with do not want to see your file unless you've actually written a live offer. So huge difference between what you're getting between broker and dealing through a major financial institution.
Mm-hmm. So the message to that buyer, the first-time home, well, any buyer really, is to get a pre-qualification. Absolutely.
Correct. Not just a pre-approval. And again, I'm not, I want to be clear here, I'm not knocking brokers. I'm just saying that if you go to a broker, it's only the broker telling you that you're good because because the file is not sent forward to a lender until you actually have a live deal. Yep.
Right. Okay. So well, if anything, they should learn tonight is this slide right here, which is so important. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Hugely important.
Yeah. Well, the common question, how long is my pre-qualification good for, and also closing costs.
Right. So the pre-qualification is good for 90 to 120 days, depending on the lender. With TD Canada Trust, we go out 120 days. It's about 50-50. Half of the major lenders will do 90 days. The other half will do 120. The pre-qualification is essentially ongoing. All that happens is at the end of 120 days, if the client hasn't purchased, we can rebook their rate for another 120 days. Now, if it goes out, 4 or 5 months and they still haven't bought something and then they finally buy something, does the pre-qualification disappear? No, but we would then require perhaps a more recent pay stub because probably at that point the pay stub is 90 or 120 days old, so it's dated, so we'd need maybe a new pay stub. The only other thing that could change too is hopefully the purchaser, the client, has not gone out and taken out any more loans or incurred any more debts during that time frame, because of course that can affect your pre-qualification if you've taken on other debts during that time frame. But assuming that's not the case, then we just basically move the client forward and saying, okay, you're still requalified, here's your new rate, you're good for another 120 days, and when you actually purchase, we may need a more recent pay stub, and that's really about it. So it's sort of ongoing. It doesn't really expire as such. When the client actually makes a purchase, there are some closing costs. The BC government has a property transfer tax, property purchase tax for new purchasers, which is 1% of the first $200,000 of purchase price plus 2% of the balance. But for first-time home buyers, they are exempt from the property transfer tax up to a purchase price of $425,000. Beyond that, there is a partial or scaled exemption between $425,000 and $450,000. So you will pay a tax beyond $425,000 up to $450,000. Once you go past $450,000, you pay all the tax. There is no partial exemption or carried forward. You go past $450,000, all the tax is payable to the government. There's no exemptions whatsoever, first-time home buyer or not. So those breaks are gone. Legal fees on a typical transaction will run probably around $1,300. You may have an appraisal fee on a conventional mortgage of $300 to $400. If it's a high ratio insured mortgage, there is no appraisal fee. And then the purchaser will require either a survey certificate or something called title insurance. Now, a survey certificate will run about $700 to $800. A survey certificate will actually will be a sketch done by a BC land surveyor that shows where the house is on the lot. Or in lieu of a survey certificate, we can get something called title insurance, which is just an insurance policy, which is about $225, and that won't show the purchaser where the house is on the lot. but it will provide an insurance policy in the event there is an encroachment. For example, let's say they bought a house and there's a garage on the property, and they find out that the garage is hanging over the neighbor's lot line, and they've obtained title insurance. And the neighbor comes along after the purchase and said, look, your garage is on my lot line, I want it moved. The insurance company will protect you. They'll pick up the garage and move it over onto your lot line. So that's about $225. So I think if you're a first-time home buyer purchasing for $4.25 or less, your closing costs will be less than $2,000 on top of your down payment.
Sometimes we run into situations where the home was built, let's say, years ago, and there's an old survey in the file, and it shows the home on the land. They can use that as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Usually what may be required is the seller may have to sign a statutory declaration that no additions or improvements have been completed in the property since the original survey was done. But yes, we can accept that original survey.
Okay.
Quite commonly. Yep.
Okay, good. And also, I think that I should mention too that in most cases, as a realtor representing the buyer, the commission, the real estate commission, is in many cases covered by the seller's end.
Correct.
So that's not really. That's right.
Purchasers aren't paying a commission to the realtor.
That's right. Just so they're clear on that. Okay. From a realtor, so I thought I'd jump in here too and talk just a little bit about first-time home buyers, maybe some tips and things that I could chat about. We've talked about the finances and how important that is to get in order, and you have to do that before you, what I call, look and love. It's so very important, as you've talked about, Jerry. The other thing that I briefly mentioned too is partner with a team. Partner with the team of a good realtor, a good finance person, and a lawyer. And with this team surrounding you, you can confidently go out there and find the home of your dreams, or a home and not really, let's say, avoid as many obstacles as you possibly can. The other thing that I wanted to point out to the first-time home buyers is that you don't have to call the name on the sign. Now, I guess if you want to, that's fine, but if you have a good realtor with you as your partner, they're representing your best interests. So you, as a first-time home buyer, use that realtor, use his or her experience to protect your best interests. Visit homes and areas different times of the day. You might go there in the morning. It might be nice and bright and sunny. What does it look like in the afternoon? And visit that area. Maybe talk to the neighbors. That's a good idea too. Stay non-emotional. This is a very, very exciting time for many people, whether it's your first home buying experience or whether it's your 10th. And there's a lot of emotions. I sometimes tell people it's a temporary period of insanity. And this is one of the roles of a realtor, is to keep you grounded and to do your due diligence. It's so important to make sure that you get a home inspection. Make sure that you walk around the property and see how it feels to you. I mentioned a term here on the screen called the CMA. This is something that we use, a comparative market analysis. We use it to help sellers list their property, but it's also a very, very good tool for buyers because you can see what has sold in that particular neighborhood. When you write an offer, make sure that you know that a counter offer might come. So it's best to keep a little pad there in your negotiations. And lastly, there's always many homes to choose from. I think many people, if they're in an emotional state, they fall in love with this particular home and they get so disappointed if they lose it. Well, don't fear. There's lots of homes out there on the market, in the marketplace. So those are just a few little tips and things that I've noticed over the years as well. Go ahead, Jerry.
I'll jump in a bit too. And I agree with that sort of summary. We can go back to the previous screen, I guess. But
okay.
Go back one. Yeah, I mean, some of those points are extremely important, and like especially staying non-emotional. you go looking at a house thinking, well, I'm going to make this purchase and I'm going to make it go. Don't never buy with your heart. Buy with your head. I mean, your heart might say, I love this place. It's exactly what I want. But if it's not the right property or the right location, you have to try and, best you can, stay objective, stay non-emotional, because this is a purchase that you're going to live with for the next 4, 5, or 6 years. And if you buy too soon and too quickly without doing a lot of research and doing the due diligence, you can end up saying, well, I jumped too quickly. I bought the one that I didn't really want. And so it's so hard to not get emotionals, or sorry, so hard to keep emotions out of it and making it that purchase with your mind, not with your heart. And I have to stress that as well.
Yeah, and this gets back to that team. We're here to help you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, stay grounded and to show you all the different pluses and minuses about this potential home, and rely on us. Don't be afraid to ask any question. There is no stupid question. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as we were talking here, there's been a couple questions that have come in, and I'll just read them off to you, Jerry, and you can respond. One of the first questions that came in was, I see a home, but it needs a lot of renos. Can I get money for that? Can I get financing for that? And how does that work?
Okay, so yes, you can, and that's a great question. It's a program called CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Purchase with Improvements. So you found the home that you really like, the location, and the home is great. It's got great bones, great location. The house is sort of laid out the way you want, but when you look at it, you think, oh, it's got green shag carpet. Well, then again, maybe you like green shag carpet, but anyways, it may have green shag carpet and it's got older, kitchen countertops and cabinets, and you think, well, I like this place, but I don't know where I'm going to get the money to fix it up. So there is a program called CMHC Purchase with Improvement. So you negotiate your best purchase price on the property, and then you go in and think, well, I want to do new kitchen cabinets and countertops, and I want to do new flooring. You get us a quote for the work that you want to complete to the property, and then we submit the file for an approval to CMHC or to TD, whichever, and we submit it saying, all right, here's your purchase price, which is $4.25, and we want to add $15,000 worth of improvements. So the purchase price with the improvements becomes $440,000, including the renovations. So we can finance the renovations into the purchase price, which means you're not taking out a line of credit or credit cards or personal loan to conduct repairs or renovations or improvements to the property. So it can be financed in the purchase price, and it's a great way to buy a house that you like in a particular location, or you like the home, but it's tired. You can upgrade, and you can include it all in the mortgage financing and borrow it at much cheaper rates than a credit card or a personal line of credit. Great program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sure sounds like. Now, there's some restrictions on that and certain things that you have to do, but at least that's the basics. And if you're wondering out there, the person who asked that question, you can always contact Jerry, and he can get you those answers. I think I answered this a little bit, but the question came in, a house looks perfect to me. Do I really need an inspection? I have a friend in construction. Well, do you want to jump in there, and maybe I'll follow up?
Well, and I guess that's a personal choice. I mean, they always recommend to get a building inspection, determine what condition the property is and what does it need, or, what am I missing here? But I have a friend in construction, and it's kind of a personal choice here, I guess. If the friend of yours is a contractor or in construction and knows a lot about construction, probably in a lot of cases that person may be able to provide just what you need to know on the property, because you've looked at it. You may have looked at several properties before you finally come to the conclusion that this is the one I'm really interested in, and you may have a pretty good idea of what's out there. And so your friend may have enough knowledge to give you that information, and that's all you may require or that you're comfortable with. But if you want to go further, you might want to get a professional building inspector who can at least then go in and provide more depth information as to what the house may or may not need, or or that it does come up to snuff.
Okay, my answer is probably go for the inspection. I think it's a small amount of pocket change, really, compared to what could happen. Remember,
you're making the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your life. So why would you not spend an extra, maybe $350 to get a building inspection to make sure, as opposed to relying on somebody who is a friend, who may be knowledgeable but may miss some stuff, and if there's a problem, then you're going to have a problem with your friend, and that makes it kind of tough too.
Yeah, and I was going to also add that there's a lot of things that happen behind the walls that you really can't get into without special equipment.
Right.
I had a webinar just a couple of weeks ago, and you can go to victoriahomechat.com, and I have a recording of it. But we had a home inspector talk about what to do and some things that he can do, and he also has a program where he offers some warranties on some of the maintenance things, or furnace and things like that. So there's lots of advantages to having a home inspector, and in the big picture, it's just a little bit of insurance that is money well spent.
Exactly right. Yep.
We want to buy a cheaper, older home and fix it up. Are there any issues about that with older homes? I think that one thing that we've learned recently is that there's certain rulings now that if you go in and start renovating a home that was built before, I think it's 1990 or 92, that there might be asbestos in it, and to get the required permits, you have to go through a hazardous materials check. So what do you know from your end, Jerry? How does that impact the whole approval process?
It doesn't really impact us that much, as far as the overall financing. I mean, the purchaser has to satisfy themselves as to the age, condition, and quality of the property. We don't require a copy of the building inspection to provide financing for a property. That's really between seller and purchaser, and they will come to terms on maybe an adjustment in the price depending on work that may be required to the property or not, and we finance on the balance or what that adjusted price may be. Mm-hmm. But we don't really get into that side of the picture between seller and purchaser on what the building inspection has revealed or not revealed. We end up with usually there's a negotiation on the price, and we'll finance on that.
Okay. Well, then I guess the message is if you, the buyer, run into an older home and you want to do renos and you want to do them properly with permits, check with your realtor about some of the requirements. I think that's, again, it gets back to the team. We're here to protect you.
Right. And that also comes down to if it's buying an older home where you want to do renovations, that's your purchase with improvements that we discussed earlier.
Right. Right. And I think this is the last question that came in. The person is saying, can suite rental income help me qualify? Well, in Victoria, there's many, many homes with suites in them, especially around UVic where I live. If you have, let's say, a potential renter of $800,000 a month, can that be used to offset some of your costs or to qualify?
And the answer is yes. We can use, and there's sort of two answers to this question. If it's a high ratio insured mortgage where your down payment is less than 20%, then we can use the suite income, but usually what happens is we will take 50% of the suite income and add it to the client's income for qualification. What will that do? On a typical suite, that will increase a borrower's buying power by about $35,000 or $40,000. So with a suite there, they can probably borrow another $35,000 or $40,000 on a high ratio mortgage. Now, on a conventional mortgage, what we'll look at is on a conventional mortgage, we can use up to 80 or maybe even 100% of the suite to assist with qualification of the mortgage. So that may allow the purchaser to borrow another, you know, 80, 90, or $100,000 on a mortgage when it's a conventional mortgage. So it can be used, yes.
For that, do you need to see any type of lease agreement or tenancy agreement?
Yes, in that situation, the suite must already be there, and it must be generating income, current tenant. So we ask for a copy of a current lease agreement on the property.
Okay, but there's but there's no specification whether it has to be what we call a legal suite.
No, as long as the suite is there and ready to go. Sorry, the suite is there and it is rented, and we can confirm the rent. We can use rental income to assist with qualification.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, well, that's great. Well, we're running short on time. I think that those were great questions, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, there's always so many other questions. And what I would encourage the viewers to do is to get in touch with me, of course, or Jerry, and we'll be glad to help you out. And if we can't help you, then we'll point you in the right direction. So, Jerry, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, you'll come back again, and we'll choose another topic on real estate. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, folks, that's all we have time for tonight for the Home Buyers 101. The next webinar will be May 30th, next Thursday at 8 p.m. We're going to be talking about downsizing your stuff or getting ready for the big move. We're going to have a guest speaker, Franca Labella from Downsizing Solutions, and she's been in business for, I think it's 7 years now, very successfully helping seniors and other people organize and downsize their stuff, whether it's moving into a smaller place or into some seniors' homes. It doesn't matter. We have some good tips for you to help it make it less stressful. All the details you can find on victoriahomechat.com. And for tonight, if you missed part of the webinar, don't forget, if you go there, we have recordings of the programs as well. So I just want to thank you. This is Bruce McCallum from DFH Real Estate, and I'm the host of Victoria Home Chat. And thank you very much for joining us. Good night.